Arizona Wildcats. Listen, I'm not sure they have a dude. Like, I think Caleb Love can be that on certain nights, and he's been good, much better than he was a year ago with North Carolina. He's guarding more consistently. He's been more efficient, but he's still never going to be efficient, right? He was 7 of 25 against FAU. And for every big-time shot he made, he would miss a couple. He'd miss a dunk wide open. He'd miss a couple threes. So still, can you count on Caleb Love, to be consistent, to be a guy that you can rely on when it matters most? That's my biggest question with along with some other ones, Doug, right? I mean, again, some of their other players, Boswell hasn't been as good as I thought he would be. When I saw him down in Duke, I was like, all right, this dude could be a top 5 point guard in the country. He has not played like that lately. What's your biggest concern or worry with this Arizona team now that they've lost 3 of 5?
Well, there's a couple. You talked about Boswell, okay? Saw him play with Team USA this summer. Didn't love it, okay? And then I'm like you. I saw him against Duke. But then now you start to factor in, okay, Duke's point guard at the time, now that he's hurt, they're actually better. And he's basically playing against freshmen where he's a really experienced guy. Like, I just don't think he's maybe that good. And he didn't play that well. Part of it is sometimes it's not you're not that good. Some of it is you don't play that well. I think some of this was also styles that make the fight, right? You look at the front line of Stanford was stretching out Arizona. Arizona's got great size, length, follow around the rim, but you're not playing around the rim against Stanford. Part of it was really good coaching from Jared Hass and his staff. Part of it is just the styles make the fight and that they got bigs that can step out and shoot. And Arizona wasn't able to get the body blows to beat them up inside. So there's a lot of factors there. But I do think that, and this is an adjustment that we have to make. It's the hardest thing about the committee all years, and it's especially hard for the committee in these years, is that teams change dramatically. They just do. And if you have guys back that have played a lot of college basketball, you're older, you're going to be better early on. But then late in the year, teams will catch up to you. We've always had that with the mid-majors as opposed to the high majors. Now, different high majors are different. So I don't think this Arizona team is crazy talented. I like their mix early and their toughness early. Obviously, the Duke win speaks to that. I was a little cautious, maybe even suspect of Boswell. And some of it is the style. And like some of it is just, this is conference play on the road. It's always going to be tough. I mean, if we just went through the Pac-12 results, right? Obviously, Cal's not very good. They lost both of those games. But, Oregon sweeps the LA schools. Oregon State, they didn't just beat SC. They stomped SC. Maybe it speaks more to what's going on at USC. So I'm using that, the macro, to talk about the micro, which is, hey, it's one league road game. It's a team that shot the hell out of the basketball, a matchup that's not good for Arizona. That's how you beat Arizona, is by stretching them out. And, oh, yeah, by the way, all of that, and we'll get to it, Florida Atlantic lost to Florida Gulf Coast. Maybe because Florida Atlantic beat them, we're like, wow, what a huge win. Maybe nobody's all that good. And that's probably the reality, is the difference between the best and the worst, or the best in the middle, is very, very slight.
That's a great point. And more than ever this year. Again, we've kind of talked about it before, but you got the extra COVID year still. You got all these transfers. As you said, teams trying to figure it out. Some coaches are better than others at being able to do that, right? Chris Beard's done it for years. So for him at Ole Miss right now, and they haven't played a great schedule, he's able to do that quicker. FAU is a team, though, that brought almost everything back, Doug, from a Final Four team, right? Dusty May was able to somehow get Nellie Davis and Elijah Martin back, even though they could have made a lot more money somewhere else NIL-wise. So they had just beaten Arizona out in Vegas in that double overtime game that was maybe as entertaining as any game this entire season. And then they go to Florida Gulf Coast. And this isn't Andy Enfield's Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast team. This was a team that had just 2 wins against Division I teams prior to this game. And FAU dug themselves a hole. They kept coming back, but they couldn't get over the hump. And they end up losing this game at Florida Gulf Coast. So to me, how worried are you about FAU? Because I am a little bit concerned now, Doug, because I just thought to get this thing clicking, Elijah Martin would be healthy, which he looked healthy when I saw him down there in Boca, and he's been struggling the last couple of games.
Well, there's a lot to it. Okay, first, it just changes when you're the hunted as opposed to the hunter. It just is. You know, that Florida Atlantic coming into your building, Florida Atlantic on your schedule, that's a Final Four team. That's a preseason top 10 team. It's a different energy, and you got to adjust. We talked about this all year, right? For Bryant, they had a mess going on with a coaching change right before that game, and Bryant pops him. So there's a little bit, and, you know, we could say the same thing about Villanova, who's got a couple of gigantic wins outside of playing in the Big Five, but they're the big dogs in the Big Five, and they go 0 for the Big Five. So, but I think for Florida Atlantic, yeah, I mean, like this is why they had to play that high-level schedule out of league. This is why the Arizona win will save them. And when I say save them, I mean, hey, no one is perfect. It's also holiday season. These games are really hard. You know, either you're going into a break where guys have their plane tickets already, or you're coming out of a break and sometimes you lose that rhythm. Those games are really hard. So I think there's a multitude of factors. But again, let's go back to the original statement about Arizona. The difference between Florida Atlantic, talent-wise, like they're a really good team. They might have one NBA player, and he's going to play in the NBA. I don't think he'll be a first-round draft pick in the NBA. So their talent is not so much greater that they can just show up, and you're everybody's biggest game, and you got to make an adjustment to that. But the biggest thing is, again, the best teams and the mid-level teams, the difference is really slight. And an injured player, or you're trying to change your rotation, or you're coming off a break, or you I don't want to say take the game lightly, but you don't have the same level of intensity. It's hard to dial it back up after that Arizona win.
Yeah, and seeing them in person a couple times, and again, you saw them last year in the Final Four, but they're missing that big wing. You know, like Elijah Martin's big and strong, but he's only, 6'2.5". They're probably missing that one big wing that can, again, take a little Vlad Golden's been great. But if Martin's having an off game, it relies so much on Nelly Davis, and he's been exceptional. But, I look at one possession at the end of that game, Doug, and they had the ball with a chance. I think they were down maybe three late.
I think, yeah.
And they kept jacking threes. They had plenty of time. They had 20, 25 seconds on the clock, and they could have got a quick 2 and at least pressed, fouled if they needed to, and still had a chance. And it almost looked like they had never been there before. And they have never been there in a sense, like you said, of being the hunted, right? That's not something they're used to. This is an FAU program that honestly, when they go into gyms before last year, nobody was there. Nobody cared. Nobody was there. They came up on – we were there a couple years ago when Western Kentucky came in. And how many fans were there? I don't know, 500, 1,000 fans maybe?
Yeah, 750, 1,000 probably, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is new to them.
It's a high school. It's a high school gym.
Right.
It's a really nice high school gym. So I
it's
get
new
it.
to them. And
it'll sound like an excuse, but it's also the reality, which is,
right.
They may be older, but they're still college kids. And you also have guys that they're not entitled. So I don't want anybody to think, Gottlieb said they're entitled. But it's impossible not to feel like you're the toast of college basketball because we love your story. We love that you came back. We love that you're all playing together again. So some of that breeds a little bit of not overconfidence. I wouldn't say they played arrogantly, play overconfidence. And again, remember, like those guys at Florida Gulf Coast, like, dude, we're a Florida directional as well. That can be us. And that was our program a decade ago. So I think there's a lot of the mentality that goes with it. And yeah, I thought there was a little bit of panic. Now, I haven't talked to Dusty, so I don't know if he said like, hey, let's get a 3 and then, and then we'll foul, or we'll get a 3 and then we'll get a quick timeout. But I would agree with you. That possession in and of itself was not necessarily, it was like, look, guys, you're not down 3 with 10 seconds to go. You don't all have to fire a 3. Like, right. Yeah. So there was, but no one's going to go undefeated. No one is impervious to it. All of these teams are beatable, are fallible. And again, the premise to this show should be that the difference in the top and the middle is more slight than it maybe has ever been.
the one big difference with FAU, they've got quad four losses right now. And that's something that, again, is going to hurt them at the end of the day. Luckily, they have that win against Arizona. Sure. They got one against Texas A&M on a neutral court. But quad four losses is something that nobody else has right now. All right, Marquette. I got Tyler Kolek, 15 points and 8 assists in a win over Creighton. Kind of bounced back from that loss a week or two ago at Providence, where they got smoked in Tyler Kolek's home state of Rhode Island. But listen, Marquette and UConn have been the best two teams in the Big East this season, right? Which one has been more impressive, Doug? UConn's 11-2, Marquette's 11-3. Their nets are close here. Strength of schedule a lot better for Marquette. But these two teams, to me, are very close, especially if you do not factor in Donovan Clingan, the big boy for UConn, being on the court, which he's not on the court right now.
Who's more impressive? Oh, that's an interesting one.
Who are you taking? I mean, who are you taking right now if they played a series of 10 games?
Right now, without Clingan, I'm taking Marquette. Even with Clingan, it's always been a tough matchup, Marquette style-wise, for how UConn plays. But I also think, UConn's playing, you got a freshman guard who you'd think by the end of the year, he's not going to be Kolek, but he'll be a lot better. I would take Marquette now. I'm okay with that. But I think UConn, if fully healthy, and Castle's back, he's like a sophomore by the end of the year with the amount of minutes he gets, I think I would take UConn likely in March. But look, that game, though, it's something that, as we've talked about, like Stephen Ashworth was not great in that game. And I love Stephen. He's a personal friend of mine, right? He's a great dude, married.
Great kid.
And there's no flaws as a human being. And he's a prolific shooter. But when they were at Utah State, he wasn't a point guard. He wasn't. And he is the only point guard that they have. And Trey Alexander is the only other guy that can handle the ball. And if you watch that game, I mean, that's really, Kolek was better than Ashworth. That's the biggest difference in that. That's the biggest difference in that game. Shireman ends up with 7 threes, right? Like there's other stuff. And Creighton's going to have to figure it out. How do we take Ashworth off the ball in games in which he's probably only 5'10", right? In games in which he's not physically capable, do you take him back to the role that he's best in, which is as a 2 guard, right? Where he moves and he's got great gravity and he's a prolific shooter. So I think that's the question for Creighton. I have more questions about Creighton than I do answers about how good Marquette is after that win.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go through Marquette. My questions first are beyond Kolek and Cam Jones. Who are the other guys that you really feel confident about day in and day out? Like, I don't know if they have those other guys. Oso certainly up front can give you something. He's not going to give you a ton offensively, but I'd like to see some of their pieces. Sean Jones was great the other day. That's not Sean Jones generally, right? There's a reason they leave him open to shoot the 3. He made them in that game. So Marquette, to me, I'll put their backcourt up against just about anybody in the countries. I just want to see the development of some of those pieces, Doug, to where you feel good that they're going to be consistent through the NCAA tournament. Right now, I'm not there yet with Marquette's, supplementary parts.
And they don't really, they got Seton Hall coming up this weekend. You have basically like a week off in between games. So I think there'll be some development then. The issue with now in the Big East is until you get to a stretch of DePaul and Xavier, which is not until, I think, late February, they have that stretch. It's hard. Like, where are the easy games? You're playing, they have Seton Hall. If Seton Hall was at home, you think you'd get to play all your guys. I don't know if you'll get to do that at Seton Hall. Then you got Butler, then you got Nova, before you got St. John's and DePaul. So the St. John's, DePaul, but they're both road games. But I think you'll see them develop. And I think some of it was, again, the matchup of Kalkbrenner, for example, he only plays one way defensively. He plays in the drop. He rarely leaves the paint. And so if you have a 5 that can open up the defense, you're going to get shots in that game, regardless of what your reputation is. So a little bit of that is why you have certain people shooting and scoring. It's the style by which they play.
for Creighton, you kind of said it, right? Ashworth, going from Nembhard to Ashworth, it's a dip. Like, we didn't know it would be, but it's clearly a dip because Nembhard had more size. He wasn't as much of a defensive liability. And he was a guy who ran the show, who made other people better. He made Trey Alexander's job easier. He made Baylor Shireman's job easier. Ashworth is kind of different, but the same in a sense that they all need the ball. They're all scorers first and foremost. And I think they need a facilitator more than a scorer that fits. But again, when Nembhard left, you're getting what you can out of the portal at that point. And that's what Greg McDermott could land at that point, right? Like, you're not going to be your pick of anybody. And that's what people think. People go through it and they're like, well, why didn't they get this guy instead of, well, you need a hook or you need way more money than anybody else to be able to just pick whoever you want. And even if you have more money, that might not alone be it. Again, there might be some sort of connection or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to it. You lose two of your three best players, or two of your four best players to the portal. There were point guards out there that probably Creighton could have gotten, but I think McDermott probably thought, all right, well, he wants to. Part of it is Ashworth wants to prove he can play the point, and his shooting opens up the floor for everything else we're doing. I think a good portion of it is how enticing having gravity is. Somebody who you respect in shooting. And the thought is like, hey, if we have Baylor Shireman and we have Stephen Ashworth and we know what Kalkbrenner does around the basket, it opens up everything for Trey Alexander. And that's our best likelihood of success. And like, look, Nembhard's not having a great year at Gonzaga. He's not down. No. He's not better at Gonzaga, even though technically you'd say that's a step down level-wise from overall in the Big East, although the non-conference schedule is as good or better than Creighton's. But it's his style of play. I don't think it's necessarily facilitating, because that's what Ashworth is trying to do. It's the ability to take physicality, the ability to pressure defensively. I think Nembhard's a markedly better point guard. Ashworth is a markedly more consistent lights-out shooter. And this is in terms of what a team actually needs, more so than how good a player actually is.
All right, tonight is the best roster of games we've seen so far in 2024. We don't have much to choose from. So we're previewing some key games when we come back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. Happy New Year. Douglas, hope you had a good New Year. And we got some games tonight. We got some pretty good games. And we'll start with this Big Ten matchup between Northwestern and Illinois. So Northwestern goes to Champaign. Both are 10-2 this season. Both are 1-0 in league play. But obviously, all the talk is going to be about Illinois without Terrence Shannon Jr., right, who was charged with rape charges last week. Obviously, you know, there's plenty of thought that Terrence Shannon will not play another game right now while this is being resolved. And certainly Brad Underwood has to look at it that way for the foreseeable future, as if he's not going to have Terrence Shannon back for the rest of the year, which is a huge blow to the team. Obviously, what's going on personally there is a serious situation. But what's going on with this team is you take off arguably the second best player in the country. Terrence Shannon had been that good to this point, both on the offensive end and the defensive end. And you honestly, your entire team is revolved around Terrence Shannon. What you do offensively, again, what you can do. And now you take him off and you're relying on guys, you know, Coleman Hawkins has to do more, Doug. Marcus Domas, the transfer from Southern Illinois, can't be inconsistent like he has been, right? He had 33 at the Garden against FAU. Then he follows it up with, 6 points the next game. Can they be a team like before we were talking about their ceiling with Shannon? Maybe, I don't know, certainly second weekend. Now are we talking about their ceiling just getting in the NCAA tournament? Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, this is a team now that's got to look at things differently. And they've got to change how they play. Because, again, you could use Shannon initiating your offense. You could use him almost as your quasi-point guard.
I would say this. I would say this, Jeff. I would say this, Jeff. Okay, there's a couple things that need to be addressed. First, and again, this is not you. This is social media. Okay? And I've talked to several coaches about it. Right, which is you cannot do anything if you're Brad Underwood.
Right.
Anything. Okay. So there are people like if they've known since September. They can't do anything. Hey, you're if you do something and no charges have been filed, or if you act like you know something bad, something good, whatever happened, then you're going to lose your job. So the first thing is I'm going to completely admonish Brad Underwood or Illinois basketball from playing Terrence Shannon to this moment. Now, I think initially you could see a bump, right? They may actually play better tonight. Remember, they got Purdue on the road on Friday night, and that's probably where the bump. And you're like, why is there a bump? Well, you have guys that Terrence Shannon was taking the most shots, scoring the most points. And now everybody's like, I'm going to get those shots. On the other hand, there's the emotion of, did you know this was going on? Our boy is now on trial for rape. Like, this is serious, and it can completely demolish a team from the inside out. So my answer, no idea what Illinois is going to look like, but I know that let's take a breath even after tonight. Could be bad, could be really good. We'll see them against Purdue. They'll have the weekend off. They're trying to figure out who they are. But I mean, think about that. You come back from Christmas break and a National Player of the Year candidate or All-American candidate, you're not going National Player of the Year, National All-American candidate is no longer on your roster, no longer there on a daily basis, and he's going to be on trial, essentially for his life. So, yeah, this is a dramatic thing, and you don't know how guys are going to react to it because this type of adversity you can't really plan for.
I just saw him and sat down with him for 45 minutes 2 weeks ago after their Colgate game. And honestly, Doug, I was planning on doing a big story about Shannon and Kevin McCullough, two guys who started their careers as roommates in Lubbock at Texas Tech, and kind of how their careers had mirrored each other in some ways, right? Non-shooters who had worked and now become arguably, again, two All-American. I mean, realistically, they were the second and third best player, the two best players not named Zach Edey in college basketball over the first 10, 12, 13 games of the season. And now, again, if you're Brad Underwood, you got to plan like you're not going to have. You just are. And Illinois is just, going to be a shell of himself in terms of what they are, because there's no other guy who can do what he did in terms of being able to create offensively like Terrence Shannon. All right, Syracuse Duke, Doug. In the ACC, Syracuse goes to Carolina down to Durham.
Agreed. All right, let's get to another game. Yeah.
So Duke's won 8 straight against Syracuse. 8 straight. Can Syracuse and Judah Mintz and J.J. Starling and some of these other guys, and Red Autry coaching them, can he end this? Because Boeheim had been owned by whether it was Coach K or John Shire last year. I don't think they can. I think Duke now is starting to figure this thing out. And they got Tyrese Proctor back. And now he's going to settle into a role coming off the bench because Jared McCain has been awesome without him. Jared McCain, the TikTok star, has been also a star on the court lately, scoring from all 3 levels. I remember seeing him in the preseason, seeing him on the AU circuit, and that's what he can do. He can get it going quickly, and now he's playing with confidence, which I don't think he had earlier in the year. Remember, Caleb Foster was the guy at Champions Classic that really showed out in that game. He was the star in Chicago. But now it's been Jared McCain who's clearly taken over as kind of the number 2 guy behind Kyle Filipowski. And it takes a lot of pressure off of Flip and a lot of pressure off of Jeremy Roach. So to me, I don't think Syracuse can win this game on the road. I think it was at the Dome. Maybe you'd say they could keep it close, but I think this one could get ugly.
I don't know if it's going to get ugly. I mean, I think Syracuse they're another team. They've been kind of figuring it out a little bit. They're playing a different style. They played a little bit of man, a little bit of press last year. Now they actually playing a lot like Duke has always played defensively. That's what's unique about it. And when you have Mintz in your backcourt, you have a veteran who's your best player going against a true freshman. You got to think that's an advantage. And again, then you're playing at Cameron, and I know it'll still be full, but it's a little different in terms of the crazies now January 2nd as opposed to the crazies, January 13th when the students are back, or January 20th, whatever, when everybody's back. So if there's a time in which Syracuse could go in and give Duke a heck of a game, this is a good time for them. I think it'll be more competitive than that. I agree with you. I think Duke's improved. I think Syracuse is getting better as well. I think this game is one where Duke wins, but in much closer fashion than you think.
All right, my favorite game of the night is out on the West Coast. All right, and it's a Mountain West battle between 2 teams that really have been terrific this year, right? New Mexico, Colorado State, first conference game for both teams. Mountain West has been pretty darn good this year, right? I mean, Nevada's been good. San Diego State hasn't been quite as good as we thought, but they're still fine. Boise's probably 5th right now in that league, but Colorado State shooting over 53% from the field this season, while New Mexico's holding opponents to under 40% shooting. Who do you like here? I mean, the best player on the court is Isaiah Stevens. I think we agree on that. But Mashburn's back. Donovan Dent was hurt last game. I think he'll be back for this one. And you got House. Like, New Mexico's got some guys, man, on the perimeter. Some really good players.
New Mexico's really good. Both these teams are really, really good. And you look, New Mexico hasn't been healthy. They haven't had Jamal Mashburn Jr. the entire year, and he's an elite player, and he's super experienced. So, when you look at their ranking, some of it is quality competition, some of it is haven't been healthy, whereas Colorado State's really more known. This is a high-level basketball game. Of course, at Moby, right, which is a tough place to play. But again, no students. We'll see how many students. The one thing about Colorado State, as opposed to CU, is Colorado State's where Colorado kids go. CU has a much higher percentage of kids that go home, go to LA or go to Texas or go to Arizona or Vegas, when you're on winter break. I think you nailed it. Great game of the night, going to be an awesome atmosphere. And then you have veteran guards going at it, right? You got in the conversation of an All-American point guard for Colorado State, and Jalen House, who's been spectacular, and he's surrounded by guys. The best part about this game is both teams average like 84 a game. Like, they can all score, shoot, score. So I'm very excited. I obviously give the nod to CSU playing at home, but wouldn't stun me at all if New Mexico wins this game. This is a big-time team. I've talked to several coaches who play against New Mexico. Like, they're as good as anybody in the country. And, of course, we've seen Colorado State, who can beat anybody in the country.
So my question to you is, how many teams out of the Mountain West end up making the NCAA tournament at the end of the day? I think we both agree Colorado State, as long as they can kind of get healthy here, and they've done a good job with standing a couple injuries for the last couple weeks, playing some non-D1s has helped. I like New Mexico. I like San Diego State. Are we talking 3? Are we talking 4 here? 5? What are we thinking?
I think you got to say 4 with a possible 5th. And it's not crazy to find a scenario which you could be 6th, because we haven't – you mentioned Boise. I don't think Boise does well enough to fix their non-conference, but that's a team. You got 2,000-point scorers with Degenhart now scoring 1,000 and Max Rice. No reason that they couldn't ultimately win the Mountain West tournament or win enough games. We haven't mentioned Utah State, who Danny Sprinkle in his first year is 12-1, right? This is a really, really deep quality conference. Now, the key to that stuff is, and like, hey, man, D-Dan Thomas is the real deal at UNLV, and we've seen them play well. Now, you can't lose to UNLV because their numbers are so bad, right? You can't lose to San Jose. But there's a world there where you're talking 4 feels kind of set, and you might get into the 5 and 6 variety. I'm not promising 5. I'm not promising 6. But there's a world where it's out there if those top teams all beat each other up and they don't lose very much to the bottom teams, if that happens.
And that world that also
we haven't talked Nevada. We didn't mention Nevada.
I don't think Nevada's going to stay there, but maybe I'm wrong. I think Nevada's the one who kind of slips. I don't know. Blackshear's been great. I just don't know if they have enough around him.
They're pretty good. I mean, they go out and beat the crap out of TCU out in Hawaii. Like, they're pretty good.
I mean, imagine if the Mountain West gets 6, and they could, because again, the ACC is not great this year. The Pac-12 is not great this year. A-10 could be right. A-10 could be a 1, maybe a 2-bid league. Big 10, instead of being 8 or 9, could be 6 or 7. So there's going to be more bids out there to be had. And what the Mountain West has done is it's put itself in great position coming out of the non-league to have a chance to have 6. If things, like you said, things got to break right, and you can't lose to the Fresnos, the San Jose's, those teams. You can't lose if you're Boise. Like Boise, you got to finish top 3 or 4.
Here's why they're so good, and they're better than other teams, right? House and Mashburn, back from last year, right? Isaiah Stevens, back from last year. We mentioned Nevada. They got 3 fifth-year seniors back from last year. So you don't just have older players. You have older players returning to the same school. So you actually have a culture established. And I think that is, in the future, I do think the big boys will do more of it. But in where this thing is trending with NIL is, if you have NIL, the portal can be somebody else's problem. Get a high retention rate. Keep your best players. If you can do that, that's the difference here. That's why Nevada's good. That's why go through all these teams. They're all the same. It's the ones that have these moving pieces and new players that are really struggling.
All right. With the new year upon us, we're giving out our 2024 college basketball wish lists on the other side of this break. Stick. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb here. Happy New Year again. We're giving out our 2024 wish list. The things we want to see this year in college basketball. Douglas, I'm going to start. And I'm going to start with the best rivalry in college basketball is what, Doug? What is it?
I mean, how do you compare with Duke, North Carolina?
You do not. You do not. And my wish list is that both of those teams are ranked in the top 10 when they play each other this year. Because I feel like the last couple of years, like one's been really good. The other, in last year, neither was like elite, if you remember. Right? Carolina was a fringe tournament team. Duke came on the second half of the year, but they weren't a team that we were talking about as a national title contender. This year, I think both teams could be in the top 10 when they play each other both games in Durham. And then at the end of the year, I can't remember which one's which this year. If it's Durham at the end of Durham might be March.
It's Durham because last year I did the radio call. It was at Carolina, and that was like Hubert Davis's last stand with last year's team, where they won that game. Maybe they get we wanted to just win a game. We'll put you in the tournament. Do something. We'll put you in the tournament, and they couldn't do it. It's interesting you point that out, because when you look at, what are the 5 best rivalries in the sport? Indiana, Purdue. Purdue's awesome. Indiana's not. Arizona, UCLA. Arizona's good, but a little floundering a little bit. UCLA is not. I would even say within
Kentucky,
the Big
Louisville.
12.
Kentucky, Louisville.
Bad, not good, right? And then again, within the leagues, right? Within the leagues, like what's the best? Arkansas, Kentucky has been great last couple, but Kentucky's been down. Now Kentucky's up. Arkansas is just okay. In the Big 12, I would say there's everybody versus Kansas, but talent-wise, it's been Texas, Kansas, sort of, right? Texas they're fine. They're not great. It's more Houston versus Kansas. So I agree with you. The sport needs both those teams to be good when they're playing, because, Syracuse Duke
bigger.
has lost its. Yeah.
Just feels bigger. All right, what do you got? What's kind of the thing that you want this year in college hoops? It can be anything, Doug. What's the one thing you want to happen?
I really want these teams that have returning players to do well in their league and in the NCAA tournament, so that there's the portal combat is a real thing, and you have guys on every staff that are checking out players that they're not going to scout, they're not going to play against, they're not going to do nothing with because of the portal. And I think what can save this sport is the ability to retain the guys you want to retain. And it's a copycat sport, right? That's just what it is. We see somebody be successful. So I want Florida Atlantic to do well. I want
Purdue.
We mentioned
Purdue.
We want Purdue, the Mountain West schools, the ones that have had players that have had success. Part of it is you got to have some success, because when you have success, at least personal success, everybody's calling you, texting you, trying to get you to get in the portal, leave, get more money. So I love the players that stayed to be rewarded, and their teams be good because of it. That's on my wish list.
All right, so another one for me is I want to see another Cinderella get to the Final Four. I loved it last year. I know we all want the heavy hitters to get there at the end because it's better matchups for the Final Four. I understand that. But, man, watching FAU, like San Diego State's not a Cinderella to me. FAU is a Cinderella to me, right? One bid league.
Come on, man. Yeah, they're a true Cinderella. But let's not undersell, how weird it was to have San Diego State
two of them.
And FAU, right? And San Diego State they've been building to this point, and it's a celebration of 20 years, 25 years of success on Montezuma Mesa. But there was something good, the wonderment of a fan base when they're like, I never thought I'd go walk in and you're like, holy cow, we're at the Final Four. So let me meet you halfway with it, okay? I need some blue bloods, and then I'll take a Cinderella, because that's all the best Final Fours have had that.
Yes, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Give me one. Give me one real, and I think we're going to get one this year. I don't know who the hell it's going to be, But a year ago today, I remember going there on January 31st last year. I did this show from the media room in Boca at FAU. And I didn't think there was any shot in hell that day that we'd be seeing FAU, even in the Sweet 16, never mind the Final Four. All right, give me another one. Give me another one for you. A wish list for college hoops. Is there something else that you want this year? Could be player, could be team, could be whatever.
It's a great question. I truthfully, honestly, I'd like to see Marquette and Tyler Kolek make a run to win the Big East. One, I think their style of play is something that other teams and schools should emulate. And two, just again, factoring around an older point guard he can score, but traditionally a pass first guy and his toughness. Again, this is not me saying anything negative about UConn. UConn's a great program and a great team. But I'd like to see Marquette go on a little bit of a run here. There's a big city that supports a small private school. It's Shaka Smart and his own kind of personal redemption story, although I don't think he needs to be redeemed for anything. I love the Marquette story and Tyler Kolek and how he plays. Like, he plays in many ways the way in which I wish I could have played. Like, I had all the passing, all the other stuff, I came up short with. So I would personally love to see him. I would personally love to see him do well.
He's a stud. All right, I'm going to keep it in the Big East. I'm going to give you something that's going to happen, not something that may happen. Something that's going to happen. In the last Saturday of January, there's going to be a game in which it's not a game you're going to look at and be like, all right, that's a riveting matchup between two teams that I have to watch. But you're going to have to watch the start of the game. And that's because Ed Cooley is going to go back to the dunk, go back to the Amicus Center, whatever the hell you want to call it. And I was there 2 years ago. Good. When Chris Beard went back to Lubbock, and I was there too. Nasty. You were there too. That's right. We were the only two. Yeah. We were like the only two national guys that were there.
And I was in the coach's locker room with Chris. Okay.
Before the game?
Was in there. Yes.
I didn't know that.
And
he didn't let me in.
Yeah.
He didn't let me in there.
Of course he didn't. You're not really friends with him. I am.
No, he was mad. He was mad at me. You know why?
You're not really friends with him. I am. That's really what it comes down to.
No.
Everybody's mad at you, Goodman.
He was mad at me because I kept taking videos of the fans before the game. It looked like they were going to topple the bus. Did you see that?
No. Listen, this is where there's a parallel there. Okay, this is where there's a parallel. Is what he was upset about was it wasn't the students that were yelling at the bus the night before. Those were his friends. In their defense in Lubbock, he raised, I think it was $32 million for the practice facility, which is just beautiful. Okay.
Insane. His
problem was like, look, students and fans can be fans. You're an adult, right? He's a Texas alum. They offered him a gaggle of money, and it's Texas, right? So he was personally hurt by it. He's like, my own friends don't understand that this is my dream job. Okay, so now Ed Cooley, place he grew up in, another place that all of these people the people that they get emotionally tied to are not the students and the fans. It's everybody in the community. And when the community turns on you, it feels different. And I'm sure that's what he's walking into, right? Because a lot like Beard, you left for a on paper more prestigious job in the same league. So he's coming back every single year. And and it's not like Providence does not breed some nastiness at the dunk. Like, that place is going to be on fire.
Ed Cooley will handle it better than Chris Beard did going in. Trust me on that one. All right.
Sure.
We're going to go back to tonight's games, and we're going to talk about the point spreads, where Doug actually reigns supreme in 2023. We'll see if he can pick up where he left off next. Goodman versus Gottlieb. All right, welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. 2024, Doug. You killed it in 2023 with these point spreads, but we'll see if you can pick up where you left off. I'm hoping.
Scan that QR code real quick.
Scan
that QR code. There we go.
Scan it all you want, because I'm turning over a new leaf, baby. Turning over a new leaf. And we're going to start Purdue.
All right, give me the lines.
Yeah. Purdue at Maryland. The Boilermakers. It started at 7.5, went down to 5.5. It's now at 6.5. Purdue on the road in College Park. Who you got?
I have Purdue. Again, Juju Reese inside. That's and for people who don't know, that's Angel Reese's brother. Remember, Angel began her career at Maryland as well. Fantastic athlete, and in many other games, he's the best and biggest athlete on the floor. Not this one. Again, I don't think that's a way to beat Purdue. This is a Maryland team that, with the UCLA game, maybe is the exception, hasn't been great. I think Purdue's kind of a machine. Doesn't hurt that you're playing Maryland while the students are still gone. Give me Purdue and the points.
All right, give me the Terps to cover. They've done well against Purdue lately in College Park. That's a tough place to play. This is a game that could turn around their season, and I think it will. All right, Iowa at Wisconsin.
Wait, so you going money line? Are you going money line? You taking Purdue straight up?
No, I'm taking the points. No, I'm not going to be stupid.
Okay, well, it doesn't turn around there. They lose a close game. That doesn't turn around their season, Jeff.
No, but I think they can win it. But I'm taking the points because I don't need to do money line in this. In this, I don't have to take money line with you. I'm going to take the points. All right, Iowa, Wisconsin, same number. Wisconsin laying 6.5. Who you got? Quickly.
This is not a great Iowa team. They lost a lot from last year. But I do think this is a closer game. I'm going to take Iowa to keep it closer.
Me too. I'm going to take the Hawkeyes. I think they're not going to be overwhelmed athletically by Wisconsin. All right, Butler at St. John's. Rick Pitino also given 6.5 against a pretty hot Butler team. Surprising Butler team.
And Ludlam, the transfer from Houston, has got an ankle problem, may or may not play, although that may or may not help St. John's. They got a lot of depth. But I like Butler to keep this thing close, maybe even win the game on the road.
I'm going to take the Johnnies here, and we're going to do a fourth game quickly. North Carolina at Pitt. Carolina giving 4.5 at Pitt. Who do you like?
Didn't love what I saw from Pitt on the road at Syracuse. I'm going to take the favorite in Carolina. Freshman point guard for Pitt against the veterans of Carolina.
Older guards, an older team. Carolina, I think, is going to be tough to beat. I think Carolina's going to get better and better, and they've started off pretty well. All right, we've started off pretty well, too, in 2024, Doug. You came to play, and we'll see how you do as the year keeps going. Goodman, Gottlieb, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year.
welcome in to Red Corner, Blue Corner right here on Stadium, and a Happy New Year to everybody who is watching right now. Just wanted to let you know that the Blue Corner is empty right now. Jake Butt out there in Los Angeles making his way back, but he is certainly celebrating the Wolverines' berth into the national championship game. I am here trying not to hate, and I'm a professional, so I won't hate entirely too hard, but I know we do have Jake Butt on the line there, so we'll bring him in right now. Jake, how we feeling, man? Just wanted to give you the congratulations. They certainly are due. I'm salty it's not my team, but y'all definitely earned a win.
Hey, you know how I'm feeling, man. You know how I'm feeling. This is amazing. And honestly, like everyone said, the Rose Bowl would be the greatest college football experience that I'll ever go to, and I think that even was an understatement. It certainly delivered, and the win was the icing on the cake, man.
Was that your first Rose Bowl?
First Rose Bowl.
Okay, so I've covered 3 of them, and covering it every time is like covering it for the first time. I think it is the greatest setting in college football. I absolutely love it out there, and it has been known to give us really, really good games, and that's what we got. Now, I just wanted to ask you, are you sweating right now?
Yes, because I had to go through LAX, and there was a line around the corner of more Michigan fans than I'd ever seen in my life. I think the entire stadium was getting on a flight this morning, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to join you. So, yes, I got a light sweat going right now.
Okay, it's a light sweat as compared to last night, and I do believe we have a photo of you. This was a heavy sweat, and this is from our guy Dave Revson over there at Big Ten Network. He said he wanted to be clear, no one dumped water on you, Jake. So explain to the people why you're sweating so damn hard.
All right, well, we were up in the very top booth. Like, there's a media booth, which is like the top story of the Rose Bowl. And we had a show post-game. So, like, we left right before Michigan was about to take the field to go on their final drive to tie the game in regulation. We left. And as we're walking down as a crew, and I can hear, like, the anticipation building in the crowd, and I looked at our producer, and I'm like, hey, like, do you mind if I like run right now? Like, why are we walking? We're going to miss this. And he's like, no, go for it. So I like dead on sprinted in my full suit and my 15-pound backpack carrying all my cameras and everything like that. And of course, you know me, dude, it doesn't take much. But if I'm full sprinting about 800 meters in a suit, that's going to lead to a sweaty conclusion. And of course, it was a sweaty conclusion anyways with the suspense of the game. But it's the Rose Bowl, man. I'm not going to apologize for being fired up for a great game, especially when it's my alma mater handling business like they did.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't apologize for a great game. You should not apologize for Michigan winning. I think you should apologize for all that sweating. Sam Brief wants to know, are there any sweat stains on the blue couch? And we're investigating right now, and it seems like it's pretty dry for the moment, but I know when you get back, it might get a little bit sweaty there. But we do have to talk about this football game, though. As we talked about, Michigan comes away with the win. It was 27-20 as the final score, won in overtime. You alluded to what the environment was, and we all know what the Rose Bowl setting is, but give us a real window. You were down there on the field for that final play in overtime where Michigan got the defensive stop. Explain what everything was like in that moment and then the celebration thereafter.
It almost even started pre-game, JP. Like, I was on the field pre-game, and I say, like, there was a time when, you know, Big Ten teams or Michigan, whoever from the North was taking on the SEC's best, Alabama, Georgia. And when you look at it pre-game, you'd say, wait a second, like, the guys from the SEC, that's a different beast, man. Bigger, stronger, faster. When Michigan took the field, I was blown away. I think Michigan actually looked bigger, stronger, faster. And the level of focus and intensity from the Wolverines and Bama too. I mean, both teams, the way they took the field, we knew we were going to be in for a treat. But yeah, the conclusion of that final drive, it just pretty much sums up perfectly this entire season for Michigan. Certainly wasn't a perfect game, man, by no standards. I know, they're going to go back and watch the tape and say, wow, we won this game, but boy, did we leave some meat on the bone. But they did what they've done all season, which is come through in the biggest moments when they needed it most. And that fourth down drive, man, it was truly glorious. Probably the best feeling I can remember as a Michigan alum and a Michigan fan.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how Michigan pulled through after some ugly moments in that football game, and we know the way it started with JJ throwing the interception that got overturned. There were a couple of special teams gaffes where one actually resulted in a turnover. The other one puts Michigan in a precarious spot toward the end of the football game. It seemed like none of that mattered to them. It seemed like a team that was really focused and ultimately destined on winning this football game. And you mentioned the magnitude of a team from the North beating an SEC team. It's not something that we see every day, particularly in the postseason. It's not something that happens. And quite frankly, this is a program we talk about under Jim Harbaugh that had struggled in the postseason. They had not won or even led in a playoff game up to this one, but ultimately they do get the dramatic victory. I'm coming up on 30 years this year. You're close in age to me. In your lifetime, has there been a bigger victory for Michigan? I understand they haven't won the national title yet, but I do think that this win is emblematic of what this program has been building towards. Is this the biggest win, you would say, in probably the last couple of decades?
I mean, the only thing that I think could even compete with it is just what the 2021 victory over Ohio State meant in the Big House for the first time in like 2 decades. I mean, that one, you want to talk about emblematic, that one's up there, but it's a different standard, man. When you're playing in a college football playoff, when you're playing for a national title, I mean, that's almost in a league of its own. You certainly can't compete with it. And man, I mean, you're playing the best the SEC has to offer for so many reasons. This game was the perfect challenge. You know, when has Michigan beat the best the SEC has to offer? It's been a while. Michigan hasn't won a college football playoff under Coach Harbaugh, has struggled in the postseason going back. The last bowl game before this was my junior year. Back in 2015, the last bowl victory. So this one is in a league of its own. Next week will probably eclipse that if Michigan can handle business. It definitely will eclipse it.
No, I mean, if Michigan handles business next week, that's certainly going to be one of the biggest victories probably in the history of that program. And we'll talk about some of the legendary players that can be made if they walk away with the victory there. I know the legacies are already being cemented after this Rose Bowl victory, but I want to move over to the offense. And when we were getting ready for this game, we had talked a lot about the Michigan offense and things that needed to occur. And some of the conversation was about things they did not do late in the year when J.J. McCarthy was banged up and the offense kind of took a little bit of a step back. But you and I also both realized some things that they always did that we thought were going to be a big shift in this game, something that could be a huge impact. I think from the beginning of the football game, Michigan used formations, personnel, shifts, motions to confuse the Alabama defense. And we talked about how much a Nick Saban defense needs to communicate in order